Yep, you guys saw this right. Marble Zone is actually kind of good, I'm not gonna lie.
Uh-oh.
I know people like to hate on it. I know people like to call it one of the worst in the classic Sonic games. You know, I can kind of see where they're coming from. Before we rush into these 4 originals, some things need to be set straight. Like, what the ideal Sonic stage looks like in the classic formula, or what the balance of speed and platforming should be. Also, some other important aspects, such as how the game should feel to play, and the game's art direction, as well as its soundtrack. Without these things established, it's really hard to critique these titles properly without making it seem like nitpicking. Let's start off with perhaps the most important thing, how Sonic controls. Ideally, he should be easy to apply speed to, but should also be easy to stop at high speeds. As these games are still platformers, it shouldn't feel like you're fighting to bring Sonic to a stop. He's not a tank, at least not with these running shoes. But taking Sonic out of this blank box, let's plop him into a level. But wait, we don't know what it should look like, play like, or even sound like. Well, we've got to start from somewhere, so let's lay Sonic some ground to run on. And obviously we need some challenging gameplay. As Sonic falls into the category of what most like to call a speed-based platformer, we should encourage the blue guy to go fast, but to also be mindful of his surroundings. So let's place some boring placeholders here, there, a bit of there too, and done. If he loses rings or even dies playing this stage, that's awesome. That means the stage is designed to have Sonic attempt it over and over again, until eventually he has the greatest route he can find. Now, there's a clear difference between good level design and boring, sluggish stages, and sometimes plain BS. So we'll make sure to make this stage fair enough to the player on their first playthrough, with easier paths that aren't optimal for a fast run. But the more artsy parts are still quite important. Fish don't belong in a volcano, and a ball of fire shouldn't be underwater. That would be bad art design. The music should equally fit the vibe of the stage you're playing, so no sad tunes during a thrilling run through a burning forest, and no silly, wacky songs during a climactic boss. Alright, we've got those things covered. Let's dive into where it all began, on June 23rd, 1991. This entry in the series will be by far the easiest to talk about, as all it has to offer is 6 zones, special stages, and 1 hedgehog. Starting off with the levels, which are mostly all memorable, whether that be good or bad. The very first zone in Sonic's history is also the most overused, Green Hill. But guys, you've got to realize that it's for a good reason. Really, this is one of the most open 2D levels that this series has to offer. It encourages player freedom, balances speed as well as platforming, and is meant to be replayed. I mean it when I say I found paths I've never even known about before when I was replaying this stage for footage. As these are the first levels, the boss can also get away with being pretty simple. Alright! This stage is awesome! What's next? Now, originally, my opinion of Marble Zone was the same as most. That being, it's boring, doesn't encourage speed, and has way too many moments where you just stand there.
Menacingly!
However, I watched a video from a channel, ZachTheInsomniac, the link's in the description, who explained that Marble Zone wasn't as bad as people said it was, and showed off some of his gameplay. There's no way that's real. Oh my god, it's real. Marble Zone is actually pretty good. While it does still have the occasional stop and go moments, most of these can be skipped by using built-up speed to your advantage. The boss is also very easy to understand, and can be beaten really fast, but is still a slight step up from Green Hills in terms of difficulty. I definitely encourage you to go back to Marble Zone, replay it, and look for ways you can use your speed to avoid lengthy sections. Spring Yard Zone has much more areas to truly explore, and is way more open than Marble Zone is. Shortcuts such as this one here in Act 1, where you can build up speed from a ramp to reach speed shoes and rings, or this one, where you can collect an extra life and a pathway to the end of the stage by falling into the center of a spring pit, makes Spring Yard feel lively, and definitely fun to play. But be careful not to go too fast, or you'll crash face first into a moving spike ball. Also, watch your feet during the boss fight, or the platformer you're standing on might get ripped from under you. After defeating Robotnik for the 3rd time, the game rewards you with... Wait a minute. This isn't a reward. This game's water physics makes the 4th zone, Labyrinth, a slog to play through. It doesn't help that the music is obnoxious either. And seriously, how am I supposed to see these stupid enemies that jump out at me? At least the boss is good, right? Right? No! Wrong! You wanted to bash Eggman's head 5 times again? Well, too bad! Instead, you're jumping, waiting, losing rings, and dying from spikes! Who thought this was a good idea? This sucks! If this game doesn't improve, is there really any point in playing it? Oh, thank God. Starlight Zone is a nice break from the platform-heavy Labyrinth, and has way more speedy parts, as seen with the many loops that are present. It still finds a good balance between speed and platforming, as demonstrated with these catapults, that can be used to get to secret and non-secret areas. The boss utilizes this feature, and it plays out quite well in my opinion. Wait, what's this? Is Sonic 1 evoking a sense of joy into the player? This is unacceptable! Send in Scrap Brain! God, this zone is awful. It's even worse than a final level I'll talk about later. Does this level have the right to place bottomless pits? Yeah, it's the final stage. Should it place them as often as it does? Probably not. At least there's only 3 acts of this though, because another one would make me lose my mind! Let's just get to Eggman, beat the boss, and be done with... Is this not just Labyrinth Zone Act 4? Except the water is purple, and the air bubbles spawn way less often, and the whole stage is infuriating?
Maybe it's time to finally bring this home. What do you say?
Final Zone is the final zone. Final Zone. Final Zone. And is a 1-part boss against Robotnik's crushing Pillars of Doom. Hear me out, I actually don't think this boss is that bad. Is it anticlimactic? Yeah. Is it easy to understand and honestly kind of fun? Also, yeah. Is the sound mixing terrible? Yeah. But hey, it's solid, and at least it's better than another final boss. After giving Robotnik one last bonk, Sonic 1 is over. There's 2 possible endings to this game, and they're both pretty similar. The good ending will show if you collected all 7 Chaos Emeralds through this game's special stages. They're a headache, trust me. And shows the emeralds flying away from Sonic. The bad ending will show the cutscene without it. I know, what a punishment. Sonic 1 is definitely a mixed bag in terms of level quality, but its art style, music, and gameplay features served as a guideline for many future releases. This game's high sales allowed Sega to make more Sonic titles, starting with his direct sequel on November 24th, 1992. Starting right off with a bang, this game serves us some reheated nachos. Sure, it's a ripoff, but at least this game does it right. The colors instantly pop more than Sonic 1, the music is better than Green Hill, and the newly introduced Spin Dash feels amazing to use when going through these spirals. All this makes for a great 2 acts, which replace Sonic 1's 3-act formula, making the pacing much more rapid. The boss is incredibly simple too, and I can't decide if that's a good thing. I mean, seriously, a toddler could beat this first try. Rings are also incredibly easy to rack up, meaning getting to the special stages usually only takes a couple of attempts for a new player. Speaking of special stages, let's talk about those. Sonic 2 reworks how Sonic 1's special stages work, a common theme among the classics. This time around you still have to have at least 50 rings, but the portal is found at checkpoints. The stages themselves are still trippy, but Sonic 2's are a little bit more manageable. If you have enough rings before passing a checkpoint, you'll move on to the next part, until the stage is beat and you obtain a Chaos Emerald. The best part is that you can do this multiple times in a single act, meaning you can collect all the Chaos Emeralds really quick if you wanted to. The worst part is that Tails is a sellout! But back to the zones. Next up is Chemical Plant, which is arguably this game's most iconic zone, with slopes galore, a solid environment, and really good music. But one of the things I like most about Chemical Plant is how it handles its water sections. Sure, the physics aren't a step up from Sonic 1, but the parts that you're submerged in are cut really short, meaning you can be done with them in under 30 seconds with some skill. Oh yeah, the boss is pretty average too. It's just Eggman firing sludge at you, and it can be beaten even before he drops his second round. But after Chemical Plant comes Aquatic Ruin Zone. And yeah, this one doesn't really have much to talk about. It comes with a solid environment, with multiple water sections that don't break the pace that much. It also introduces totem poles that shoot arrows at you. The boss is really creative and easy to understand. When Robotnik smacks the totem poles, use the arrows to hit him. And then there's the casino level. No, not that one. No, the other casino level. No, the other one! The original? There we go. Casino Night Zone is a zone that inspired so many Sonic stages after it, for good reason too. Who doesn't love some gambling aspects in their Hedgehog game? This zone's slot machines, bumpers, elevators, and wind-up springs help with racking up high scores, and keeping high speeds. Really, this stage is just so vibrant. The reds, blues, and yellows go together perfectly. Also, this is how a pinball boss should be done. The following zone is Hilltop, which is like if Starlight Zone and Marble Zone had a baby, except the baby grew up to be better and more well-viewed than the parents ever were. It's a weird analogy, I know. It reuses a feature from Sonic 1, with the catapults being your only way to maneuver many high ledges. The environment, however, is clearly inspired by Marble Zone, with the caves being very reminiscent of the underground temple. The boss for this zone is also almost 1-to-1 for Marble Zones, except way easier. You know, I'm noticing a theme with these Sonic 2 bosses so far. Anyways, let's move on to Mystic Cave, which is really just a chill experience. The main gimmick of these two stages are the levers that can be pulled to unlock different pathways, along with these vines that can crush the player. Also, just listen to this music. The boss is already done?
Oh!
But next up we have Oil Ocean, which is interesting to say the least. This is the point in the game where I'd say it dips a little in quality. Not that any of the following stages are bad, just that they're more forgettable than others. Oil Ocean introduces these platforms that shoot up in the air periodically, along with oil that essentially acts as quicksand. This can be taken advantage of in the boss of this zone, where you can wait in the oil for most of the fight and completely skip the middle phases. The next couple of acts make up Metropolis Zone, which isn't as bad as people say it is. I actually kind of like it. It balances the challenge and speed aspects really well. There's lots of creative elements that play into this zone's theme, like the screws. This zone also introduces what I like to call Robotnik's instant transportation system, along with the iconic praying mantis enemy. Well, maybe not iconic to you guys, but they are to me, okay? However, there definitely can be some how was I supposed to see that coming moments, which is mostly why people dislike Metropolis. The other reason is because this zone has 3 acts, which does slow down the pacing a bit, but when it's only one zone, I personally don't mind. Fortunately, the boss isn't all that difficult to understand. Robotnik finally decides to put a shield around his very breakable pod, but is still stupid enough to fly down to our level. And after that, we have a filler zone, which is also an auto-scroller, probably the worst combination in a Sonic game. Sky Chase Zone is a single act that takes place on Tails' tornado as he and Sonic make their way to Robotnik's flying base. I don't know, this is just boring. Maybe if it wasn't an auto-scroller, I'd have a bit more fun, but still, an act where you do nothing but defeat enemies for 2.5 minutes just isn't fun. And then there's Wing Fortress Zone, the penultimate level of Sonic 2, and it's just kind of disappointing. The colors are dull, half the time I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, and the boss is super unremarkable. And instead of a wacky new invention by Robotnik, he pulls out a big laser that you have to whack, while he stands away from any sort of danger. This zone paired with Sky Chase forms the definite low point of Sonic 2. The final part of this game is 2 boss fights, where Robotnik tests out some of his new inventions, except none of them work. The first one is what most assume to be the prototype of Metal Sonic. I mean, it's easy to see why. With some memorization and not much practice, this boss is over before you can subscribe with the bell turned on. The next and last phase is the famous Death Egg Robot, which will definitely stump new players. As you have no rings, it's difficult to test what works and what doesn't, as one wrong move will send you back to Metal Sonic 1.0. But listen close for a sec. Wait on the left side until the cursor locks on, run away before the robot crushes you, get a hit in, run to the far right side, and repeat the process until it's defeated. When noting these tactics, this zone becomes way less menacing, and honestly kind of fun. Finally, after destroying the Death Egg, Sonic chases after Eggman, who leaves him stranded in space. There's two possible endings for this game. One, if you collected all the Chaos Emeralds, to which Super Sonic will fly by Tails' tornado, and the other for if you didn't, in which normal Sonic lands on the plane. And that's it. Sonic 2 is finished, and we're halfway through the games. This game is a massive step up in quality from the original, and I love the new spin dash as a staple to Sonic's moveset. The stages are also greatly improved, with the vast majority of them encouraging speed, but still the occasional platforming section. However, the third act of this game was a noticeable step down from the other zones, with a lot more filler present. But other than that, Sonic 2 is an amazing, albeit short, Sonic game. Let's see if Sega kept up their momentum in late 1993 with Sonic CD is definitely the most controversial game in the classics. You either love it or you hate it, and there's really no in between. Let's start with Palm Tree Panic, which at this point is like reheated rice. This zone instantly sets up CD's wacky concepts with not only this weird looking loop, but also this game's trademark move, the Super Peel-Out. It's similar to the Spin Dash, except it gives you no defense, meaning if you hit an enemy, you'll either lose rings or die. It's a really well designed move that when used right, can make traveling back in time very easy. Speaking of time travel, that's the other big selling point of Sonic CD.
Let me break it down for you, Mark.
Every zone has two possible outcomes, the good future and the bad future. It's pretty self-explanatory. To obtain the good future by Act 3, you must first use a pass sign to travel back in time, where you have to destroy Robotnik's generator that's hidden somewhere on the map. If you destroy the generator for Acts 1 and 2, you'll get the good future. If not, well then what's wrong with you? The bosses are the same no matter what the future you get, so there's only one per zone. For Palm Tree Panic, I got the generator for one act, but not the other, so I was stuck with just Panic for Act 3. The boss is super easy and can be beaten in 4 hits, which lets you move on to the next zone, Collision Chaos. Now listen up, because this zone introduces two really important characters. That of course being Metal Sonic and Amy, characters that are basically a staple in this franchise at this point. Right off the bat, Metal Sonic snatches Amy, so we don't see them for most of the game. This zone is definitely interesting, and for sure the most vibrant level that CD has to offer, as everything in the present version appears in bright pink, blue, or yellow. CD likes to use much more abstract concepts instead of painting a clear picture of a stage's atmosphere. As such, this zone includes bumpers and springs everywhere, but doesn't fully commit to the casino theme in its back and foregrounds. However, these acts also see the return of the praying mantis enemies, so it's an instant 10 out of 10, no questions asked. Sure, the boss is a worse version of Sonic 2's Casino Night, as you can't spin dash and hit Robotnik, but who cares? Did Casino Night have the praying mantis?
I think not!
Next up is Tidal Tempest, which is yet another water level. However, this one is actually fun. At any rate, this is a zone where I ended up destroying no generators, meaning I got the super duper bad future. It's just like our world, except the Sonic Loom games were a massive success, and got 4 sequels and a racing spin-off game. Breathing up all the air bubbles leads to Robotnik's defeat for this boss, leading right into Quartz Quadrant, the following zone. This one doesn't really have much to say about it, except it's the only zone where I beat Secret Stage, which are definitely a part of this game. Like Sonic 1, you have to have 50 rings when you pass the goalpost to advance to a special stage. However, it takes a more Sonic 2 approach in the sense that they try to replicate 3D, which works alright half the time. The objective is to destroy a certain amount of UFOs scattered around the map, rewarding you with a time stone for successfully doing so. But anyways, back to Quartz Quadrant and the boss for Act 3. This boss has us doing cardio for a minute straight because Eggman invented a new treadmill, but tests it on us to make sure it's safe to use. We're mean though, so we break it, but let him get away. Breaking the generator leads us into the next zone, Wacky Workbench, where Sonic CD gets really weird. Again, my original opinion on this zone was the exact same as every other person, which is that these stages are a convoluted mess of platforms. The floor is probably the worst part, as landing on it will catapult you all the way up to the ceiling and lose you lots of time. But hold on a second, wait, let's apply the Marble Zone mindset. Maybe that'll make it more fun? Nah, still not much better. Can you make it more manageable? Yeah. What you're supposed to do is maneuver the platforms instead of straight rushing through. Does that necessarily make it more fun? No, not really. And the boss? Oh my gosh, it actually took me a bit to remember this one. You use platforms that shoot up in the air to defeat Eggman, and it's a pretty fun time, I'd say. But finally, we're on to the zone where we reunite with Metal Sonic and Amy in Stardust Speedway. This is a fairly decent zone, except for the fact that it can be really confusing most of the time, with the pathways being a headache to navigate. This makes finding the generators even more challenging, but I'm happy to say that I actually got both the generators, meaning I got the good future just in time for the Metal and Sonic race. This is easily the most enjoyable boss out of all the classics in my opinion, as you have to use your speed, but still be sure to be wise with it, to reach the end before Metal Sonic does. Once you do, Amy is freed, and we're on to the final zone of Sonic's CD, Metallic Madness. It's pretty good. Act 1 goes by really quick on repeat playthroughs, but the second act will have you spending almost 3 minutes navigating this factory. The zone has no trouble introducing new features like the revolving doors or the shrink ray, which both work pretty well. Just be careful not to be crushed by these pillars or blown to pieces by these bombs, and you'll be at the last boss of Sonic CD in almost no time at all. Surprise surprise, just like Sonic 1, this final boss is super underwhelming, but this time it's barely even fun. You hit Robotnik like 5 times and he's dead. And that's it! Amy dies in an explosion, and the non-existent credits roll. I kid you not, on my first playthrough I legitimately said, "That's it? That's the game?" Sonic CD is probably the most interesting out of the classics. It has some really solid levels, but equally as many confusing ones, so it's hard to gather a flat-out opinion of it. The time travel aspects definitely carry this game's playtime, but the level design is mostly good nonetheless. Plus, this game gave us 2 more iconic Sonic cast members, so you can't go wrong there. Although, I do wish we'd seen them a bit more. I prefer Sonic 2 over CD, but there's no debate that it's fundamentally a good game. But...
Yo, somebody get the door!
Wait, hold on. Somebody's at the door. I'll be right back. Sonic 3, the game that was so ambitious for 1994 that it had to be split into 2 separate games for the Genesis. Well, in 2026 I was able to download in less than 15 seconds. It's insane how far technology has advanced. Since the most common way to play these games is in the bundled version, I'll be covering both Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles in one section. Just a quick heads up, yes, I know this game has bosses for both acts, but this video is getting lengthy, so I'll only cover the Act 2 bosses, as those are more important. Starting off with Sonic 3, which opens right where Sonic 2 left off, with Sonic and Tails on the tornado, both of them heading towards Angel Island, which is the center spot for both of these games. Knuckles knocks the Chaos Emeralds out of Sonic, and we immediately get going on the first zone. Sonic 3 goes back to the much more preferable 2-act zones from Sonic 2, which just work way better. Act 2 directly introduces us to this game's special stages, which don't have a ring requirement to enter them. Instead, they're hidden around the map, and won't appear until you get close to them. They stick with the theme of 3D, but this time around you'll have to collect a certain number of blue orbs before getting a Chaos Emerald. If you touch a red orb, you're out, and transported back to the act you came from. After defeating Angel Island's boss, which has a sick build-up, we're sold out by Knuckles and dropped into the island's waterways in Hydrocity Zone. It's become quite a debate on how to pronounce this, but I prefer Hydrocity instead of Hydro City, as it's faster to say. This zone probably manages water and land sections the best out of the classics, but of course, the water parts can get a bit annoying. Fortunately for us, this game introduces some new upgrade capsules that can help with things like these, that being the elemental shields. There are 3 types of these: fire, water, and electricity, and technically the insta-shield too. Each shield makes you immune to its corresponding element. Fire shield makes you immune to fire, water shield helps you breathe underwater, and electric shield makes you immune to electric fields. These shields also give you a different ability that happen to be some of modern Sonic's moves, like the fire shield granting you the homing dash, the electric shield the double jump, and the water shield the bounce. These new abilities are really fun to play around with, and helps with the experience of Sonic 3. Anyways, let's go back to Hydrocity. The boss for this zone is also water themed, and all you have to do is avoid Eggman's water whirls and attack him when he comes close. After defeating him, the water bursts, sending Sonic and Tails up to the next zone, Marble Garden. I've gotta say, this is quite a weak zone, and really forgettable too. The only things that stood out to me were the little blue contraptions that opened up pathways when you spin dashed on them, as well as when the ground collapses in Act 2. Oh yeah, also when I got the secret stage. I think it's probably best if we don't talk about it. At least the boss is sorta interesting. After Eggman causes the ground to completely collapse, Tails has to carry us into the sky to battle him, which is the first of its kind. After a couple hits, he's defeated, and the game transitions into the zone that took me way too long to beat, Carnival Night. This zone definitely has the best looking environment in the game, and is really creative with its objects. For example, the balloons that act as springs when you pop them. But please tell me you guys all got stuck on those barrels. We all thought you had to jump up and down to make them go higher, right? You can see the moments in my playthrough where I look up a tutorial on how to beat not only the barrels, but also the boss. Speaking of the boss, I was making it way too hard for myself. Up until that point, I wasn't taking advantage of the insta-shield Sonic has, which extends his damage box. Anyways, the boss is just Robotnik playing with a marble for a minute and a half, and then he dies. But hey, Ice Cap is up next. This is one of the most beloved classic Sonic zones, and now I see why. It's really just a great time. You start with an awesome snowboarding part before seamlessly transitioning into gameplay. I did get stuck on this one part in Act 1, where you have to push a mound of ice onto a slope, but that's mostly my bad. There's so many ways to get tons of rings in these acts, and the boss is a piece of cake. Use the really convenient platform Robotnik gives you to hit him around 10 times, and advance to the final zone of Sonic 3, the launch base. This looks like a mess! The only consistent thing is the looming threat of the Death Egg in the background, but besides that, I can't say I enjoy these stages all that much. But hey, at least Robotnik's instant transportation system makes a comeback. The best thing about Launch Base would have to be the bosses, and how Sonic 3 wraps up its individual story. The game ends with Knuckles plummeting back to the island's surface due to Robotnik's ship, and Act 2 has 3 separate bosses. My personal favorite is Big Arms, which surprisingly doesn't exist to play Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and that's a shame, because the build up to it is incredible. I mean, you defeat 2 bosses in a row, like with only a few or no rings to spare, and think the game is over. But then the sky turns dark and a new boss comes out, and now you have to defeat arguably the most intimidating boss of the 3, with minimal rings. It feels really good when you finally destroy Big Arms, watch the Death Egg plummet back down to Angel Island, and start the first zone of Sonic & Knuckles, Mushroom Hill. Sonic & Knuckles focuses more on the story aspect than Sonic 3, so for this part I'll be reciting the story as best I can. This game, like Sonic 3, also starts with a short cutscene of Knuckles emerging from the shrubbery after his fall from the launch base. This zone introduces some pretty annoying mechanics that thankfully don't show up again, like the snare trap. The boss for Act 2 is also really cool, and focuses in on a more 2.5D aspect while facing off against Eggman. Unfortunately, we forget that he always brings a spare ship in his pocket for some reason. So we chase after him in the next zone, Flying Battery. And first of all, listen to the music. Yeah, that just tells you you're about to play a great 2 stages. I mean, come on. Monkey bars, spinning poles, spinning corkscrews, what else could you ask for? This zone has plenty of speed and plenty of challenge, which is represented in the boss. Robotnik, in his journey to perfect fitness, attempts pull-ups with his new machine, but sees that we're watching him and gets embarrassed. After we feel bad for him, we jump off the Flying Battery and fall face first into Sandopolis, the 3rd zone. It's alright. It's nothing awful, but the sand slopes are clearly copied from Ice Cap, and having to manage the ghosts in Act 2 is a pain. But hey, at least the boss is kinda fun. After the embarrassment from the pull-up Bot 3000, Robotnik attempts to hide himself in sand, but he forgets how easily it breaks. After we shame him for his pull-up Bot 3000, he grows white with rage and rushes away. We follow in close pursuit, but lose track of him as we enter the following zone, Lava Reef. This is the zone where I finally figure out the other type of special stage in this game, with the bonus stages. These are really just extra ways to collect rings and extra lives, and don't amount to anything when trying to unlock a true ending. Anyways, back to Lava Reef. And yeah, this zone is solid. It plays into the theme of volcanic atmosphere, with rocks and crystals being the main foreground, and magma being present in the background. The Death Egg is also there, just a looming presence in the background. Act 1's boss actually teases at this game's final boss, which I'll talk more extensively about when we get to the final zone. Lava Reef's main boss is fairly simple to understand, and easy if you know what to do. Robotnik was so mad that his anger manifested a literal volcanic eruption across the whole area, and we have to face off against him in his fury. However, too much anger creates distraction, meaning he's a piece of cake to take out. The next zone does some heavy lifting in terms of storytelling, meaning it's the shortest out of the Sonic and Knuckles. First off, we finally meet back up with Knuckles, who refuses to let us through to his barber shop. Not taking no for an answer, we beat him up and start to make our way to the barber shop to cut our own quills. However, at that moment, Knuckles feels the disturbance in hair follicle 5B, meaning he needs to fix it at all costs. He rushes to his haircutting supplies, just to find Robotnik stealing the Master Clippers, which are Knuckles' handcrafted golden clippers that he got when he was a little kid. Seeing this, Knuckles clamps his hands around his clippers, but at that moment, Robotnik turns them on when Knuckles gets too close, slicing 2 of his dreads clean off. Robotnik flees while Knuckles, with his last bit of strength, transports us to the penultimate zone of Sonic & Knuckles, Sky Sanctuary. This zone is my personal favorite from this half of the game, and for good reason too. Platforming is always dangerous in this part, as falling platforms are everywhere, and one wrong step will have you replaying some hard-earned progress. The clouds blend in perfectly with the surrounding environment, while still providing gameplay value. The bars of vines also do the same exact thing. The zone is only one act, but still is a lengthy stage, meaning it doesn't overstay its welcome or feel short-lived. It's the ideal classic Sonic level. And let's talk about the boss. Using the power of the Master Clippers, Robotnik can power his newly built fitness planet that can fit perfectly in his pocket, along with some security guards for his gym, such as Metal Sonic 3.0, or Mecha Sonic. This guy is the biggest fraud, I'll be honest. He just recycles other bosses one-to-one from previous games, except they're even easier to beat, probably because of the insta-shield. At any rate, you'll be done with all these 3 bosses in under a minute, and after defeating Mecha Sonic, Sonic can finally run up the decayed steps to Robotnik's fitness planet, in the final zone, the Death Egg. God, this zone sucks! The upside down parts are awful, the gold ring parts drag on for way too long, and the conveyor belts! Don't get me started on the conveyor belts! But hey, at least it's not Scrap Brain Zone, and Robotnik's instant transportation system is back again, and it's a main feature for the first boss. Speaking of the first boss, let's talk about it. When we finally find where Robotnik is, he's busy testing his experimental ball weights, complete with spikes. But he's kinda cheating, because he also invented an anti-gravity machine, meaning he doesn't even have to try to lift them. After seeing us, he sent the ball weight after us, which, after an hour of strength practice, is a piece of cake to take out. This sends Robotnik into a rage spiral, and in a last-ditch effort to prove he's trying to improve his health, he pulls out his ultimate invention. The robot powered by the Master Clippers. He tries flattening us with his chubby fingers, but we break those. In his final attempt to get his revenge, he chases after us, spewing fire from his ears in rage. But really, he should have reinforced his robot a bit more, because it's incredibly easy to open his mouth and feed him 12 hits, permanently destroying his invention of all time. Now all there's left to do is take back the Master Clippers from the big fraud. And that's it. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is complete, and the Master Clippers are restored to the rightful owner. In all, this might not be everybody's favorite, but it's objectively the best classic Sonic game. It takes everything that the previous games did right, made them better, and added its own twists that are fun and rewarding to play. It's also really challenging. This game took me almost 10 hours to beat, which is by far the longest classic game I played. The music hits, the gameplay is premium feeling, and the story is told perfectly without even saying a word. I mean, really, what more could you ask from a game under 10 megabytes? And with that, all 4 original Sonic games are completed and under my belt of experience. I've formulated my own opinions of them, and come to realize that the games are a masterpiece in platforming and speed. With each release, Sonic Team took something from the previous game and improved upon it in some way, until they finally had the ultimate experience. So, should you play these games? Of course you should. Anyways, next episode I'll be reviewing the adventure games, and how Sonic handled his official transition into the 3rd dimension.
Oh no!
Until then, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video.